Okay, so this is not really a mid-month wrap-up of anything, but I feel like if I tried to wrap up my thoughts on every single book I read within a single month, my video would end up being like 30 minutes long because I have a lot of opinions, so it's not very wise. I think like I should just follow my own reading pace, you know what I mean? So instead of like in 1 month I could very easily read 7 books. Can you imagine if I sat here and I spoke about 7 books in a row? First of all, I don't think my video title has enough spaces for me to include every single title. Second of all, I don't really have amount of time to compile all my notes and then deliver them in a very long form. It's usually when I'm about to go out and I have maybe an hour to kill or so that I can sit down and look nice. So I'm gonna talk about 2 books. The first is Something Old, Something New, Something Borrowed, edited by Ken Mizusawa. This is something I borrowed from my friend, and it is a collection of 3 plays. The first is called Perfecting Pratas by Desmond. The second is Absence by Geraldine, and the third is Don't Know, Don't Care by Haresh Sharma. The nice thing about this book is that there are study guides within it. So for example, they're in this page: how to understand and appreciate drama. Then it talks about the 3 C's: context, characters, and conflict. And at the end of each play, like for example at the end of Perfecting Pratas, there is this: let's explore, let's understand, let's analyze. So yeah, it really is a school textbook, and I wish that this were my school textbook, but alas, good things have only started to come after I graduated, apparently. I'm very salty about it. So the first play, Perfecting Prata, it's a 2-person play about a father and a son. So the father is supposedly Chinese, and the son is half Indian, half Chinese, because the mother, who is Indian, has passed away 10 years ago. The son, who is currently studying in junior college, has a girlfriend called Sushila, and he wants to impress her by making pratas from scratch. He tries to make it the way his mother did, but he can't seem to succeed. He asks his father for help, but his father, his father hasn't recovered from the trauma of losing his wife, so he doesn't even want to talk about his wife to his own son, and his son really misses his mother and really wishes that they could talk about her. So this play is about that tension between father and son and reconciliation through prata making. The second play is called Absence by Geraldine Song. Okay. It's another 2-person play, and it has 2 characters, a mother and a son. So the son is the middle child, stuck between a successful doctor, older brother, and successful lawyer, younger sister. And he doesn't want to be an engineer the way his mother wanted him to be. He wants to be an actor on stage. And his mother actually used to be an actress, but she gave up her career after she married a doctor, and she decided to give up her career to raise children. The mother is on her deathbed. The 2 other children, even though they are like really successful and really rich, they don't have the time to take care of her, so she ends up staying with her middle child, who inherited the flat. Her son, this middle child of hers that has constantly felt like his mother does not love him all his life, he took like 6-month leave without pay so that he could stay at home and like take care of her. And the only reason why he has the flexibility to do that is because of the kind of job that he has to begin with. So I guess it's like towards the end of the mother's life, they're both still trying to reconcile their differences, and it does not have a happy ending because the son, after a fight, the son wanted to tell the mother that actually like he really loves her, and the mother, she actually wanted to tell him that she has always loved him the most. And actually the father, who has already passed away, the reason why he was so supportive of his middle child pursuing the arts, pursuing drama and theatre, and paying for like first row seats for everything, is because he wanted to honor his wife's sacrifice of her own career by nurturing a love for the arts in his middle child. And he only realizes this belatedly, but before they can say their I love yous to each other, she slips into a coma and dies. Yeah, it's really sad. The third play, Don't Know, Don't Care, is about a family consisting of a mother, a son, and a grandfather. The grandfather is going to die soon. He transfers from the home to their house, and the mother tries to take care of him but is having a really hard time balancing taking care of her dying father and having a job, because she needs an income as well. The son is a younger son. He is currently studying for his O-levels, and the mother just really wants him to focus on his O-levels and not confront death, you know. The older son is currently staying in university, so he's not really in the picture. At first, the son, he's kind of salty about having to live with his grandfather, but then after a while he starts to realize that he actually enjoys his grandfather's company, and he starts to get very attached to his grandfather. He wants to spend time with his grandfather, you know, like hear his stories and chit chat with his grandfather. But when his mother finds out, she like goes ballistic. She's like, why are you like talking to him? I told you not to talk to him, and like why can't you just focus on your O-levels and everything? And yeah, they have a really big fight, but in the end they reconcile, and I think like familial love shines through at the very end of the play. So that's what this collection of 3 plays is about. The next book I want to talk about is The Chrysalids by John Wyndham. I read this a really long time ago, like a really long time ago, and I remember it being very futuristic and cool, but also very pessimistic, so I reread it and it's exactly as I remember, except I have forgotten all the details and the entire plot. I just remembered the feeling of reading this book for the first time. Yeah, so what it's about is set in the future after I guess nuclear warfare has wiped out most of the human population, so they've had to rebuild. This is set somewhere, maybe in Britain, maybe in America, who knows, right? Center of the Western universe, I guess. And there is a community that lives on the outskirts of society called Waknuk, W-A-K-N-U-K. So it was founded by an old man called Elias Strom. Apparently he came from the east, somewhere near the sea. Okay, so Elias Strom is a very fundamentalist, orthodox religious white man, and so he himself maintained that it was the ungodly ways of the East which drove him to search for a less sophisticated, stauncher-minded region, though I have heard it suggested that there came a point when his native parts refused to tolerate him any longer. So what this means is that his society, which was progressive, was not acceptable to him. So he decided to yeet out of them and start his own society where he can be like the religious leader and, you know, propagate his fundamentalism. In this post-apocalyptic world, most of the books had disappeared. The only books that survive are the Bible and this book called Repentances, yeah, which was actually written before the apocalypse, which is referred to as tribulations. The protagonist of this story is Elias Strom's grandson called David Strom. His father, Joseph Strom, is like the religious leader of the community after the grandfather died. He's basically like the pastor, and he also owns most of the land, so like everyone has to listen to him. However, this community is somewhat in conflict with the government, which is like ruled by religion, but at the same time they make allowances if money can be made. Like the kind of environment that David grew up in is very reminiscent of some people's houses. I feel like you imagine you go into the kitchen and then there are all these like Christian paraphernalia stuck on the walls, left on the shelves. This pastor's house is a reflection of his intolerance. There are wooden panels with sayings, right? And what the sayings are like: only the image of God is man, keep pure the stock of the Lord, blessed is the norm, in purity our salvation, and watch thou for the mutant. The norm is the will of the Lord, reproduction is the only holy production, the devil is the father of deviation. So there's a lot of like that kind of nonsense all around the house. So offenses refer to genetic mutations, which can't be helped when you are living in like a nuclear poison land, right? There's literally radiation everywhere. No matter how far you think you are from the center of it, it spreads out in the water, in the soil. So in this world, when there is livestock born with 2 heads or 3 legs, they slaughter it, they pray over it, and then they slaughter it. In this society, they have conflated the kind of hellfire and brimstone aspect of scripture with rejection of genetic mutations or like deformations. It's their way of insisting on a kind of genetic purity in the human race, which is eugenics lah, isn't it? It's eugenics. So they try to breed this kind of intolerance in their children from childhood. They are told to report any aberrations that they see. So for babies, when they are born, you have to get an inspector to come and like inspect the baby and see if they are, you know, like in the true image of God, because supposedly they believe that man is the true image of God. So man must have 1 head, 4 limbs. On each hand there must only be 5 fingers. They must have 2 eyes and whatever. You can't even have black skin. When they have an inspector come in and they check the baby, then after the baby receives a certificate, then that baby can be considered a baby. And if that baby has problems, like let's say 6 toes or missing fingers, they will leave it in the forest to die of exposure. If the baby has already grown up and then a deformity appears later on in life, usually you report it to the authorities, and then the authorities will come and take the child away and throw it to the fringes outside of this community, where they kind of have to live in very barbaric conditions because there are no resources there. Additionally, if you are a woman and they find out that you have a deformity, they will sterilize you so that you cannot have babies, so you cannot pass your genetic material down to your children, which is I feel very uncomfortable about that kind of thing, because I feel like what gives you the right? The reason why they do so is because they believe that if you are not in the true image of God, where meaning you are not a normal human being with all the requisite body parts in the requisite forms, you do not have a soul. You are not considered a human being. Of course, this is just ideology taking on a manifested form in a novel, but it's kind of unnerving because people in today's society still think that, right? I mean, it is the year 2020, and this was written in 1955, so 65 years ago John Wyndham decided to write a book talking about how bad and bigoted people can be, and then now in today's society people are still bigoted, correct? One issue of contention is like the super large horses, which supposedly have been bred naturally. So they take big horses and then they breed big horses with big horses, so the babies will come out big, and then they just keep doing it until the horses become like double the size of normal horses with like a crazy amount of stamina. So you know, these are really good for the economy. And even though the government has approved of them, Joseph Strong, the leader of this community, does not approve of them because he thinks that they are an abomination. But hasn't human society always done that? You know, you breed like really big chickens until they become like really big. Even for cats, like cats have to have a certain form. If not, they will be like taken away and executed. So if a cat doesn't have a tail, then they will report it to the inspector. It's just, I don't know lah. However, like in other communities, they believe that they are the true form of God. So everyone in their community has like a certain deformity, and then to them that is their norm. So clearly there is a questioning of the status quo of what we consider normal. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about majority, right? So whatever the majority has, suddenly that is normal, which means that what it means to be normal is actually relative, and by extension what it means to be deviant is also relative. And in fact, like they even like point out that scripture itself doesn't tell you what is the true image of God, right? Like it doesn't tell you a real human being possessing a human soul must look like this, must have this skin color, must have this number of fingers. It is some book called Repentances that happened even before the tribulations that kind of insist on it. So it's not God's word, it is an intolerant fundamentalist word. As the plot builds up, one thing that really affected the young protagonist was when his aunt came by with a new infant baby, and she has some kind of genetic deformity apparently, but his own mother had just given birth to a baby sister called Petra, and Petra had received the certificate that proves that she is normal, right? And then his aunt Harriet comes by with her own baby, and she was hoping that his mother, which is her sister, would allow them to swap babies for a while so that she can pass her daughter off as normal, you know, so her daughter can get the certificate and she can raise this child. But then obviously her mother married Joseph Strong, right, the most intolerant man in the whole country, so the mother refuses. His father also scolds like Harriet, saying like, how can you bring this abomination into our household? How can you think that your sister, my wife, would do this kind of thing for you? You know, it's against God's will, etc, etc, etc. And Harriet, very poor thing, she went to kill herself and her baby. She threw herself into the river because apparently when you are a woman and you give birth to a genetically deformed baby, even if it's very slight, they kind of blame you. They say, oh, it's your fault, your womb is not good. And she had already given birth to 3 deformed babies. This is the 3rd, and she thinks that her husband will leave her for another woman because her womb is not good enough. And so basically for her there is no future. Actually, I don't understand why they blame the woman only. Is it not also the man's genetic material that contributes to the creation of this baby? But then the real crux of the story is when we find out that David and his cousin Rosalind, they actually have like telepathic powers, and it's not just them. There are like 7 of them in the country who can like telepathically communicate and share their lives with each other, which I guess is like a metaphor for how sometimes difference is not external. On the outside you can be like, you know, the preacher's son, you're perfect and everything, but this difference is internal, it's in the head, and it's not something that is easily identifiable or controllable, and therefore it is not easy to eradicate, you know. Him and Rosalind are actually in love with each other, and then one day they discover that his little sister Petra is actually the strongest telepath of them all. The reach of her mind is so strong that she can completely blot out all their thoughts. She can take over their heads. What happens then is that one of them, called like Anne, she wants to marry a normal because there are 5 women and 3 men. So they realize that they can't all marry each other. There will be 2 women left over, and she wants to have a normal life. She wants to marry this Alan guy who is actually like the village bully, but she loves him lah, so what can she do, right? So she decides to marry him, and she kind of like exposes them all. Alan starts to pose a threat, so the protagonist's supportive uncle, the one who told him stories about other people in other parts to expand his mental horizons, he decides to like kill Alan. And because Alan died, Anne goes crazy. She hangs herself, and she leaves behind a letter denouncing everybody, saying that one of these other people has killed her husband. Then this begins like a witch hunt for their lives. Petra actually managed to contact somebody from New Zealand, and apparently in New Zealand it's a very different place. Everyone there can communicate telepathically, and to them it's an asset. Like, the better you are at it, the more important you are. They specifically breed to have that trait. So then David, Rosalind and Petra, they are like on the run, right? On the run from their own family members, their own community members that are trying to hunt them down to kill them. But if normally there's a deviant or like a mutant, they will, once the mutants pass the borders, they don't care really, but they send like 100-man search party to hunt them down because of the threat that they pose to their ideology. Because it's scary, right? If these people can communicate telepathically without anyone knowing, and they look perfectly normal and there are no physical signs to prove to you that they are not normal, then they can kind of do anything they want behind your back, and it threatens the state, it threatens their religion. So there is like the mainland, and then there are the fringes, and then there is the badlands, and then beyond that you don't know what it is. The badlands are like just black, flattened, poisoned land that has been rendered completely uninhabitable because of the nuclear fallout. While they are traveling, they get captured by some fringes people. So the fringe people, they tried to explain to David that what the people of Wagner think they are doing is completely misconstruing scripture. So when David says, they've always taught us that it is the devil that rules in the fringes, and then his captor replies, that's what they tell you over there, 'tisn't so, boy. It's your parts where the old devil's hanging on and looking after his own. Arrogant they are, the true image and all that, want to be like the old people. Tribulation hasn't taught them a thing. The old people thought they were the tops too, had ideals they did, knew just how the world ought to be run. All they had to do was get it fixed up comfortable and keep it that way. Then everybody would be fine on account of their ideas being a lot more civilized than God's. What he's saying is that the old people, the people who created the nuclear fallout to begin with, they thought that they were better than God. And the reason why they did it is because they wanted to preserve their own power. So how it ends is that they go to the fringes, and there they meet the leader. The leader is called Gordon. The Gordon is like a really tall man with spidery arms and legs, and his limbs were so long. Actually, he was okay until he was like 3 or 4 years old, and his parents realized that there was a problem with him. So the father wanted to let the government take him away, but the mother let him escape. So he ran away to the fringes where he grew up, and turns out he is Joseph Strong's older brother, meaning he was supposed to inherit Wagner, not Joseph, right? Gordon. And Gordon, he's very salty about it, so he kind of wants to meet his younger brother to kill him. When the party from the mainland reaches the fringes, he does manage to kill his brother with an arrow, but at the same time he got killed in the process. And then the lady that Petra managed to contact from New Zealand, they took a big I don't know how to describe it, spaceship, but it actually sounded more like a helicopter. It was like a big fish-like contraption with like a taka on top, you know? That's how I interpreted it, kind of a long helicopter. They took it and then they brought it all the way over to Wagner to rescue just the telepaths, in the process killing everybody else, which is, to them, they feel like, oh, you know, it's not something that we want to do, but it's something we have to do. It's a very utilitarian kind of country that they have over in New Zealand. And then they managed to seek asylum in New Zealand, and everyone kind of lives happily ever after. So that was the chrysalids, and I feel like I would really enjoy taking a class that included this text, because there are so many things to talk about. You can talk about the community, you can talk about the backstory of how this community came to be, you can talk about the people in the fringes, what kind of system did they have, and why is it such a big deal that the women that go into the fringes arrive already sterilized. You can talk about everyone, all the different people that like David encounters. They kind of have a different outlook on the situation. They have a different outlook on who the old people are, or like what went wrong in humanity's path. And you can even like look at the very pompous speeches that the New Zealand lady kind of delivers to them as if they were, and she also called them primitive because to her society is advanced, her society is woke, they're progressive, and then these are like primitives living in some underdeveloped backwater of the world. And she wouldn't even have made the trip to go and rescue them, you know, using up the fuel, if it hadn't been for Petra, because they really wanted to harness her power. They wanted her to go over and then take lessons on how to control her power, and then teach people how to control their power, and then have babies that can inherit her power. So if not for Petra, she would just have let them rot in their primitive backwater of a country. And the things she says are also kind of like problematic. Everyone in this novel is kind of very problematic in that they have a perspective, but that perspective is not perfect, especially when informed by other perspectives. And I think that the writer does a very good job of balancing them. You can kind of understand where everyone is coming from, even the orthodox fundamentalists. I would definitely label this as a necessary read for any human being. So on my to read list, I have 8 books. I know it's a lot, okay, but I have time. The first is, I will not read them in this order, okay. I think I'll read it like heavy, light, heavy, light, heavy, light, because if you read too many heavy novels at one go, you feel very heavy inside, and it kind of affects my mood. It makes it very difficult for me to go out and like dance and express myself and have fun, because I'm just thinking about all these heavy things. So I need the light novels, the lighter novels to balance it out. One is Maxine Hong Kingston's The Woman Warrior, an introduction by Xiao Lu Guo. Yeah, I've wanted to read this ever since I read an excerpt for it in my feminism class. No chance, but now I have a chance because it's my friend's I think O-level lit text. He didn't really enjoy it because I think this is not something that should be taught at O-levels. It's a bit cheap. Yeah, but it's fine. The second is another school text. It's called Death and the King's Horseman, a play by Wol Soyinka, winner of the Nobel Prize in Literature. It seems kind of short and it's annotated. I love annotated text. From the library, I borrowed Braised Pork by An Yu, The People in the Trees by Hanya Yanagihara, Inheritance by Bali Kaur Jaswal, and then I borrowed the Ellie Smith collection, Autumn, Winter, and Spring. There was no summer, which is fine. I'll just take what I can get first. So this is my TBR. Pretty excited. I think I'll start with Braised Pork. Thanks for listening to me ramble. Bye bye.